Hello, welcome back to Hot Flashes and Cool Topics. Today we have on Dr. Lynelle Schneeberg. And this is a really important conversation, guys. And we got one of the best people in the field to talk about it. We're going to talk about sleep. And for women midlife and beyond, whether you are having sleep problems due to hormonal changes, due to anxiety and depression, or due to the fact that you had children a little later in life and you're still trying to sleep train a child, Dr. Schneeberg is going to explain it all to us. She's board certified fellow at American Academy of Sleep. She's a licensed clinical psychologist, and she's also author of Become Your Child's Sleep Coach, the Bedtime Doctor's 5-Step Guide, ages 3 to 10, which I really wish Lynelle had been out when my children were age.
Me too.
3 to 10. Because
I hear that a lot.
And I will be purchasing it when I become a grandparent, because I'm sure they will send them over to my house when they can't sleep. But welcome to the show, Lynelle. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for the invitation.
So one of the often complaints that we receive from our listeners is that they can't sleep. Women all of a sudden are finding in midlife and beyond that they are getting that 3 a.m. wake up call. We're all used to having to go to the bathroom. That's a given that we're going to go at least once or twice. But all of a sudden we can't go back to sleep. What's happening? Why are we becoming sleep deprived in midlife?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So what often happens is we have an awakening, something, we'll be a good sleeper, right? But maybe we're kind of a high achiever, or maybe we're a little bit of a perfectionist, or maybe we're kind of a type A. So we're, if you will, at risk for insomnia, but we don't have it yet. Then something comes along, and maybe it's something stressful, and maybe it wakes us at night. And that could be anything. That could be a work situation. It could be a family health situation. It could be a 4-year-old that comes to your bedside. It could be anything, really. And then we're awake and we don't really know why. We're not really sure why. And then that becomes sort of a negative experience, if you will, right? And then we tend to then do this, remember Pavlov, right?
Yes.
So we tend to start to really sort of associate our bed with some frustration, with some wakefulness, and even with what I call doing the math. Well, how long have I been asleep? How much sleep have I already gotten? How much time is left? Oh no, tomorrow's the presentation. This is not going to go well. And we start to really associate our bed with these negative thoughts, these worried thoughts. And then this pattern can actually become a bit of a grouped pattern that happens more often, right? And so you'll find yourself awake at 3 a.m. more often until it's really you're kind of stuck there in a way. And then the next thing that most people do is they say, oh gosh, I'm losing sleep at night, so I'm going to go to bed earlier, or I'm going to stay in bed later, or on the weekend, I'm going to catch up. Okay. So people throw more time at this problem, if you will. I really understand why people do that, but it's actually not the best thing to do, because then you have even more time in bed when you're awake. Because let's say you're a 7-hour sleeper, okay? Most people are about 7 hours. The sort of the bell curve of normal sleep time ranges from 5 hours to 9 hours. Almost nobody only needs 5, and almost nobody needs 9. Most people need 7, 7.5. Some people need 8, some people need 6. So it varies by the person. But it is definitely true that if you're in bed 9 hours and you're not a 9-hour sleeper, you're signing up for wake time. You're signing up for it, right? And your body will either give it to you at the front end or in the middle. That's really the dreaded time, or at the end. You with me so far?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to work with someone, I use a really good therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. People are very savvy about cognitive behavioral therapy. Usually, cognitive behavioral therapy is used for weight loss, anxiety, depression, smoking, you name it. And it's also used for insomnia. And then when it's used for insomnia, it's a sort of abbreviated CBT-I, right?
Okay.
CBT for insomnia. So from now on, I'm just going to call it CBT-I, because the other one's kind of a mouthful. And what we do is we have someone log their sleep for 2 weeks. So I would meet with them. I would have them log their sleep for 2 weeks. Use a really simple log. You can find it online. Basically, all you do is got a box for every hour of the 24-hour day, and it's got 2 weeks of that. So it's got 24 boxes, wide by 2 weeks long. And so tonight's Monday night, right? On Monday night, you would put a down arrow when you get in bed and an up arrow in the morning when you get out. And in between, if you were asleep, you'd color those boxes black or you'd leave them white if you were awake. So let's say I go to bed at 9:30, I put a down arrow. I fill this all out in the morning, by the way. I'm not sitting there scribbling in the night. Okay. So in the morning, I would think to myself, okay, last night I went to bed at 9:30. I didn't fall asleep till about 11. I slept till about 1. I woke up, I went to the bathroom. I didn't fall back to sleep till about 2:30. I slept till 7. I got up at 7:30. Okay. That person would have been in bed from 9:30 to 7:30, 10 hours. And they only slept that little 2-hour chunk, right? And that little 4.5-hour chunk. You with me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So if I saw a pattern like that for 2 weeks, it would never be perfectly the same every night, but I would look for patterns of, wow, this person maybe is in bed too much, right? Then I would use a technique called sleep compression, which means I would add up sort of their average number of hours per night, and I would put them in bed closer to that number, right?
Okay.
Than the 9 hours. Okay. That's technique number 1.
Okay.
And so that's logging your sleep and then figuring out what your sleep window, that's what we call it, what your sleep window should be. Job 1. That alone will eliminate some long night wakings. Okay. It's a lot of women go ahead, Bridget.
Oh, so would that mean so you said it was 6. Would you put them to bed later then? Would you say go to bed later or?
I would pay attention to how quick, what they preferred. So some people will say, I am so tired at 10. You can't make me go to bed later than 10. And I would say, yeah, great. And then they would say, I think I need about 7 hours, and we look at their logs and yeah, they get about 7 hours. And then I might get them up at 5, which a lot of people who go to bed at 10, they're down for getting up at 5. Mm-hmm. Right. But if they're more of a night owl, then I might put them to bed later and get them up later like that.
Okay.
But there's a lot of women who might be in bed. I meet a lot of women who are in bed like 10 to 7. All right. That's 9 hours and they're not sleeping 9 hours. So I shave it, right? I shave it down a little bit. It's called sleep compression. It's got a bunch of names. Sleep scheduling, sleep compression. It's actually, some people call it sleep restriction, but I think that sounds kind of mean. So I call it sleep compression. Okay. And most people are willing to try it for a couple of weeks while they're working with me because, they have sort of a sleep coach on their side. So that's technique number 1. Technique number 2 is called stimulus control therapy. Okay. If you unpack those words, your bed is the stimulus that we're talking about here. And what is your bed a stimulus for? Another word for stimulus is cue or trigger. What is it cueing? What is it triggering? And if you're awake every night at 1 or 2 in the morning, a couple of hours, it's triggering something not good, right? It's triggering frustration and wakefulness and downloads of, is my mom doing okay? And my boss is a pain and all that. No one's lying awake thinking about how absolutely fabulous their life is. Okay, they're not. They're sort of scoping out, as every woman does, who's the least healthy person? How's everybody doing in my life? And so what I have you do instead is I have you have some things at the bedside that you find relaxing and distracting. I'll give you examples. Reading a book with a book light that doesn't bother your partner. Reading a book on an e-reader with the night setting, right? The black background and the white letters. Listening to a podcast that you enjoy with maybe one earbud in, the ear that's up on the pillow. Mm-hmm. Listening to an audiobook, working a crossword puzzle. And you're doing that to distract your mind from the download, from the frustration, from the fact that you're awake, and you're doing it until drowsiness catches you and takes you back down again.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. So, but don't get on social media. Is that what you should not suggest that? Yeah.
No work, no email, no social media, right? No news, heaven forbid. People watch the news in the middle of the night. Okay. News, not good, not in the middle of the night.
So you don't want anything that's
nightmares, no nightmares. Yeah.
Stress.
Correct.
Yeah.
I want you to, I call it a pleasant, distracting activity.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Something calming, but will distract.
Yes. And it can be a book that you kind of like. You know, people say, should I read the phone book? PSA, there aren't any phone books anymore. And
Right.
no, you should not read the phone book. That's too boring. Your brain will just dispense with that, right? It's got to be something kind of engaging and pleasant. And then drowsiness will grab you when you're not watching for it.
Okay. What do you think about those apps like the Calm app?
If they're in, these are smart women that listen to your podcast, okay?
Yes.
The Calm app might not be interesting enough if all the Calm app is doing is saying, take a deep breath, relax your feet, okay? If that works for you, great. But if it doesn't, then I would use the story part of the Calm app, you know, the
Okay.
sleep stories. I find that for most smart women, it has to be a little bit more engaging than just a relaxation script, if you will.
Okay, that's good to know.
That's great
'cause
advice.
Matthew
yes.
McConaughey on the story time will put any woman to a happy sleep. I'm just telling you right
Very
now.
popular.
That
He's
will be sweet dreams, not nightmares. Yes.
very
Can't-
popular.
Cannot have a bad dream with Matthew McConaughey. But I
He's got a great
digress.
voice.
I know. I'm
Yes.
sorry. I digress. Go ahead.
He's got a fabulous voice, and I vote yes to Matthew McConaughey.
Okay, good. All right. So that's on the pro list. We can do that. We can't watch the news, but we can listen to Matthew McConaughey.
Yes, you
Right.
may.
Okay,
Mhm.
good. Most women listening to this right now are going, okay.
Okay, I will do it
Yes,
because, but when you said that about social media, I will see where certain people that I went to school with, they'll say, I couldn't sleep last night, especially a woman my age. I couldn't sleep. I was up, it's 3 a.m. and they're on Facebook. And
Yes.
so, yeah, so I'll have to let them know, listen to this
Yes.
podcast. And
Yeah, Facebook isn't all roses and kittens, right?
No.
It's like my husband's sick and, you know, political things and yeah.
Mhm. Yes.
And other women who can't sleep. So now you're having a
Right. So
conversation.
they're all there. Yes.
Exactly.
So that's a second the second different chapter, I guess, or segment of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Are there any others? Because those seem like really good suggestions.
Those are the two, I call them, those are the pillars. Okay, those are the pillars. But then there's other things, which we all know as women of a certain age, you might be having hot flashes, right? You might be having temperature control issues. So another part of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is looking at your environment, right? What kind of pajamas are you wearing? What kind of bedding do you have? Is your room cool, you know, heatable and coolable? Is that a word? You know, can you cool it off and can you heat it up? You know, again, do you need a fan by the bedside? Do you need really nice cold water? You know, what do you need to kind of keep yourself comfortable? And if you do have a hot flash, right, you would need to be able to manage that and then probably do a little distraction as well. So that's going to play a role.
Okay.
And then you have the environmental factors that have to do with your partner. Does your partner snore? Does your partner keep the same hours as you? Do you have a teenager who's awake until heaven knows when? Do you have a little one, right? So my own particular interest is kids 3 to 10 who are not great sleepers yet, right? So everyone knows about sleep training babies. You know, everyone has a different opinion on that. And so what I always say is I'll help you sleep train your child if co-sleeping is not working out for you, right? Some people have strong beliefs about co-sleeping. That's fine. I'm going to work with you if no one's getting very much sleep. You know, kids are super restless sleepers. And if they end up in your bed, you know, you're going to have a foot to the head. You know, your partner might leave the bed and go sleep in the race car bed in your son's room, right? Like people are doing a lot of musical beds. And so if co-sleeping is not working for you, then I love helping people figure out how to help their kids go to sleep more independently and stay asleep all night. So I would work with someone on that piece too, of course.
Because like you said, your partner might snore, and things that bother my husband don't bother me. Sounds bother him. Our cat coming into the room bothers him. Our cat pawing at the door if we try to keep that cat out. But light bothers me. So
Right.
yes, I cannot have any, like he had his computer plugged up and that light was just, I said, you gotta get it out of here. So,
Right. So perfectly put, the environment you like is not the environment your husband likes, right? And all that has to be taken into account.
Yes. Yeah. So the cat has to go way upstairs where we can't hear it.
Yeah. I mean, but similarly, my husband loves sleeping with the TV on and I hate it. So it's a
Mhm.
question of me literally blocking the light from my eyes. I can't sleep with a mask, but I like pillows in front so I can't see the light. So you
Ex-
are so many different um, alternatives that you don't think about, variables
Totally.
that are there that, and I was telling Bridget on our a recent episode that my night sweats have gotten horrible again. And it really is when you wake up in a cold sweat, because by then the night sweat has turned to a cold, you're up. You're like, you're negotiating, okay, the fan's on me. I have to go to the bathroom. I will be awake if I actually do this. So then you
Yes.
stall and you're awake anyway. So many variables that
So
we did not have to deal with in our before kids.
Mhm.
So I was going to say in our 20s, but some of us had kids in our 20s. So that doesn't work.
In our single days, in our
Right,
single
exactly.
days,
In our single.
yes.
What are some things that you would tell midlife women to avoid doing before going to sleep to help them kind of get into that mode of sleep, of a deep sleep?
great question. Fantastic question. So several things. I have to say, help your children learn to be good sleepers, number one. Otherwise, many women are falling asleep for a little period of time on their child's bed and then waking up and then trying to go to bed. And that's murder for sleep. So helping your kids become good sleepers is fantastic, number one. Number two, your kids have a bedtime routine and so should you, right? Let's go back to Pavlov. If you do the same things in the same order, you teach your body, oh, right? This is what she does when she wants to go to sleep. I get it. She does A, B, C, D. And then, if you ever noticed by the time you put your robe on, and find your novel, you're starting to get sleepy, right? So you should have a bedtime routine, number two. Number three, everyone has what's called I call it a drowsy window. So you have this little window of time that you're drowsy. It lasts about 20 minutes and then it's gone for about 2 more hours. And we
Really?
all know this because we've done all-nighters in college or gotten a second wind, people will call it, right? So you'll be drowsy and then somebody will convince you, hey, let's watch the movie. And then you're wide awake, right, at midnight when you were drowsy at 10, for example. So pay attention to your drowsy window and try to catch it, right? Try to go to bed. If I were to graph it in the air, right, it goes up like a wave and then it gets really flat and then you'll get another wave. If you try to go to sleep right here, you're in good shape. If you try to go to sleep down here, you're not in such good shape. And many women especially will feel drowsy and then they'll think, I better make the lunches, clean up, nobody likes to go to bed with anything in the sink or whatever. You're folding the quilt on the sofa, right? We all have these little things we do. But if you're not careful and those things last too long, you will miss it. You'll miss the window, right?
Okay.
So it's nice to sort of knock that stuff off before drowsiness might ever happen.
Okay.
It's good
Yeah.
to know. Okay.
Mhm.
And I know when I was doing the research that it's common for us to wake up in the middle of the night. Some women think, oh, I'm in trouble now, I'm waking up, but it's common for you to wake up a couple of times in the evening.
You've nailed it, Colleen. Everyone wakes up 2 to 6 times.
Huh.
2 to 6. And when you do that Pavlovian thing of sort of wake up and then catastrophize it,
Right.
right? Then you've trained yourself to have this negative association with the waking. Waking's normal. It's probably adapted biologically for some reason. Maybe we needed to check the cave. I don't know. But we wake up, right? Women especially, we listen, oh, what was that? Is the last one down in bed? We wake up, and we would wake up if all the kids were gone from the house too, we would still wake up. So it matters a lot how you talk to yourself about that waking. And if you say to yourself, oh yeah, that's one of my 6, one of my 4, or whatever it is, oh yeah, that's normal. I can get back to sleep now, no worries. And I know what to do if I don't get back to sleep. I have a plan. Then that whole thing just makes your shoulders go lower, right? You're just more relaxed.
Mhm. Yeah,
Great.
absolutely. Yeah, because when you were talking about the math and the adding, especially when I worked outside of the home, when I was teaching and I knew I had to be up at this time,
Yes.
and you would just take away those hours. Oh my gosh, it's 1. I have to get up at 5. And oh my gosh, can I make it? Those are so hard. And I know now I don't really have an issue with sleep now that I'm retired and I don't have to wake up.
It's like the pressure's off.
Right, right. And yeah, it definitely was more stressful when the pressure was on. Tomorrow I'm going to have an early wake day, but that's not my typical day.
Correct.
Yeah. So I can get away with that for a day.
Correct.
You also talk about core sleep. Can you explain what core sleep is?
Yes, fantastic. So core sleep, and we can drop this in the show notes if you like, there's a thing called a hypnogram. And all that means is it's a little graph of normal sleep of a young adult over an 8-hour time frame. Okay. And what it'll show, if you look at this particular graph, is that you get your deep sleep. So there's 4 kinds of sleep. Okay. Dream sleep, also called REM, right? Rapid eye movement sleep. And then stages 1, 2, and 3, right? Some people say there's 3 and 4, but let's just call it deep sleep. Okay. So there's REM sleep, light, medium, and deep sleep. All right. Deep sleep appears to be more important than REM because we get it first, and we get it in the first half of the night.
Okay.
Okay. Then we start to sprinkle in longer and longer and longer dream periods, right? Until by the morning, it's almost all either dreams or light sleep, like you're sort of skating over the pond towards the end of the night. Everyone sort of has that sense of like, you almost know what time it is. You almost know how much time there is left in your night and like that. So you get your deep sleep first, and you get most of your REM sleep in the second half. And so the concept of core sleep is this great concept that helps people kind of relax about their sleep. And here's why. Core sleep is considered to be the first 5.5 hours of sleep that you get in any given night. Okay. So let's say, again, you're going to go to bed at 11 and you're going to get up at 6. By about 4 or 4:30, you've gotten all of your deep sleep and probably 2 or 3 cycles of dream sleep. And then if you were to wake up at 4 for whatever reason and didn't get to sleep all the way till 6, what you're missing is only probably a little more dream sleep and the lightest kind of sleep. So I always say in the first few hours of the night, you get all of your protein, 3 of your veggies, right? And some complex carbs. And then if you get woken up at hour 5.5, 5.5, what you're missing is 1 more veggie and some more complex carbs. Do I want you to have more veggies and complex carbs and more sleep? Yes, of course I do. But could you get by on all your protein and 3 veggies? Yes, you could. And that mental shift of knowing that you're getting the most important stuff first and what you're losing is a little bit less important is amazing for your anxiety level.
Definitely. Because anxiety plays such a big role in
It's
insomnia.
It's everything.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, this leads me to want to tell you one of the, I think, the funniest research studies that was probably ever done in my field is called the cash prize study. And they took wonderful sleepers and they put them in a sleep lab and hooked them all up and said, okay, guys, the first one of you to fall asleep gets cash, go. And you can imagine, right? None of them could sleep.
Right.
These were good sleepers. So trying to sleep is almost like the death of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Absolutely. And I know Colleen, for being around Colleen, that 10 o'clock, if you're someplace with her and it is 10 o'clock, you will see her eyelids just look like, a shade closing. Yes, they really are.
I close shop. You know how you draw
She really does. You can
close
see it.
the shop.
It is. Yeah. And that I have noticed that about her. When we first started the podcast, I'd get a text. Now I wouldn't hear it, but I'd get
I made sure you didn't have a
yes, 3 o'clock in the morning text. When I woke up, there would be text because an idea would come to her head and she'd text it. But it's funny. My husband, on the one hand, though, he gets up at the same time. He gets up early, and he gets up early on the weekends.
Like clockwork.
There's no sleeping in for him on the weekends. So it seems like that is working for him, except for our cat. But is that a good thing to do, is to have set times?
Yeah. Good sleepers go to bed at the same time, like Colleen, 10 o'clock, and they get up at the same time every day. Anybody you know who's a good sleeper is a very regular sleeper, right? And that whole catching up thing, teenagers do it, okay? But, and that's because we set up our school year where our school start times wrong, which parents really know. It's the high school kids should be going later and the elementary kids should be going earlier, but that's not
so true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you won't talk to any sleep person who doesn't believe that, because it's a fact. The
Oh, I
research-
was a teacher. I believed it. And I think they actually changed it for a year. And I remember parents were wanting, I think they liked it because the high schoolers that were home with a young kid and the parent had to go to work, they were there instead
yes.
of the high school. Those little kids are up. They're awake. They're up.
Send them
Yes.
to school at 5:30. They're fine.
But the teacher isn't. Yes.
No, teachers know. Anyone who works
Yes.
in education knows that it would be the right decision to flip that.
Yes.
But anyway, what I was going to say is that you can't really catch up on your sleep very well. All you really do is scramble your clock of what is her rise time? Gosh, I'm not sure, because she got up 5 days in a row at 6, and then she got up 2 days in a row at 9, or 8. That's confusing to the brain. And if you do have a poor night of sleep, the very next night, your body does this unbelievably amazing thing where it adjusts the percentages of the kinds of sleep you get until you're caught up.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Wow.
Yep. So if I hold my fingers up again, REM, 1, 2, light, medium, deep. It steals the light sleep and pours it into the deep sleep bucket and the REM sleep bucket until you're caught up.
Okay.
That's very interesting.
That is.
You don't really have to do this making up thing.
Okay. So what about people who nap? How is that?
Nap is fine. A nap is fine as long as you take it at the right time for the right length. Okay. So everyone knows what melatonin is. Your body releases melatonin. It releases it quite a bit so it's almost like a fish pattern. All right. So it releases a lot in the evening, peaks around midnight, and tails off towards the morning. Then it's kind of flat. And then you get a little bump of it in the afternoon between 12 and 4. It's as if your body expects a nap. Many cultures have a nap, right? The siesta. And so if you take a nap between 12 and 4, and it's around 30 minutes or so, perfection. Okay. Your body expects it. It restores you, and it does not ruin in any way your nighttime sleep. The way to ruin your nighttime sleep is to take a nap in the forbidden zone, we call it, which is dinner or later, right? That'll push your bedtime. Everybody knows that. You ever fall asleep on the sofa after dinner and then you can't go to sleep. Or in the late morning, your body's not expecting a nap either.
Okay.
So that's what I call optimal napping.
Okay. Yeah. And I know, so I'm on hormone replacement and the progesterone, I didn't realize what was going on when I first was on progesterone. All of a sudden, the next afternoon at about 2:30, I was really struggling. Is that a thing? And then they asked me when I came back for more blood work, is the progesterone making you sleepy in the afternoon? And I said, okay, so that's what's happening.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I cannot remember. I think I probably was sleeping over 30 minutes, though. That is the problem there.
32 an hour, 32 an hour.
Okay.
You don't want a chunk long enough for your body to think, was that a part of my sleep? Was that a part of my night?
Okay. That's really good to know.
For women who are just starting to notice a pattern of insomnia brewing and the anxiety starting to go up and it's starting to affect their ability to function during the day, what's kind of the first step? What would be the first thing they should try?
Yeah, I would love it if they would go see a sleep doctor, of course. So every metropolitan area would have an accredited sleep center, right? You can look online and find an accredited sleep center. Most of them are accredited. And then you would go see that doctor, and that doctor would be a physician or an APRN, and they would check for any medical sleep disorder. Okay. So they would be asking you questions to elicit symptoms for sleep apnea or restless leg syndrome or anything like that, right? Even more rare sleep disorders, REM behavior disorder, narcolepsy. There are some that are much more rare, but they're looking really a lot at apnea or, things with your cycle or your phase, right? If you're in menopause or perimenopause, restless legs, those would be sort of the high runners. And then if they don't find those, then they would send you to someone like me. So I'm a sleep psychologist. And then I would really dig down into everything we've just talked about, your sleep schedule, your sleep environment, who sleeps in your house, anything like that, stress levels, anxiety, depression. any of those things, that would be left usually to someone like me to unpack. And every accredited sleep center is required to have a sleep psychologist, because it's so clear to the people that run the sleep medicine world that a psychologist has a lot to offer. Really practical cognitive behavioral psychologist has a lot to offer to people who are struggling with sleep issues.
Okay, that's good to know, because
That
I
is
think
good to know. Mhm.
people, so many women I know and men, it just ignore it until it's literally a point where they can't function.
Yes,
And
they take leaves of absence from work.
Right.
Mhm.
And the older I'm just finding the older I get, the more that my sleep is messed with, the worse it's going to be for me. The next day is not going to be good if I've had
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
really bad sleep night.
Yeah, it's
So-
the gas in your car, right?
Yeah.
right,
it
that's
is.
true. That's a
Mhm.
great analogy. So if we were to do a hypothetical sleep study with, let's say, a 26-year-old young woman who happens to really have trouble sleeping, and obviously they're in the middle of their 20s, she might be, I don't know, applying to PhD programs, just got married, busy working full time. In other words, guys, my daughter, and is really having trouble sleeping. And we think it might, she does have restless leg. We're pretty sure, because I'm still permanently bruised from when she was a child, kicking me all the time. She always had restless legs. But what would you suggest because there are a lot of women listening right now that have adult children that are stressed out of their minds right now. They're going up 900 miles an hour and they can't sleep. So what
So
would
much.
you recommend for someone who's out of the teen years, but not into our obvious stages of menopause? What would you
Yeah.
suggest for them?
If she struggled with sleep for more than a few months, right,
Yes.
I would have her seen in a sleep center, right?
Okay.
And I would have medical things ruled out. They'll do blood work for her legs. You already know that, right? They'll look for her ferritin levels, low iron, and they would supplement that if they need to. And then they would have someone like me who would look at her from a behavioral point of view. And most people with insomnia, they have had it long enough to have associated their bed with stress and wakefulness and frustration. And it's my job to reassociate it, right, with relaxation and sleep and pleasant feelings. Pavlov, he's famous for a reason, right? You can
Mhm.
have a very strong reaction that you've accidentally conditioned yourself to have. And then we call it dread of the bed.
Right. Oh, that might be the title of this episode. Dread of the
Dread of the
bed.
bed. Yeah.
Love
That is
that.
wow. Wow.
Dread of the bed, because
Yeah.
it's not going to go well there.
You're
right?
already anxious about not being able to sleep. Yeah.
Yep. And how awful to dread your bed.
I know. I mean, I think it was, oh gosh, it was several years ago. Paula Poundstone, the comedian, was talking about kids. She said, I was at a friend's house and they told their kids they needed to go to bed, and the kids started crying. And she said, who cries about going to sleep? Like,
right?
I mean, that's like your favorite thing in the world is to sleep.
I know. But
Just
for
a
kids,
really,
it's the end of,
yeah,
right? It's the end
yes,
of fun time, right? Yeah.
right.
And you do have those women in their 40s who have decided to have kids later in life, which we talked about.
Yeah.
And they're having 3-4-year-olds, maybe more than one, and they're not sleeping. And they're going through possibly perimenopause at the same time. Do you have any
Right.
suggestions for them besides moving out of the house and changing their name?
I was going to say, talk about a perfect storm, right?
Right.
That's a perfect storm.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I do. So parents do two things with great intentions that actually cause their children to be worse sleepers. And here's what they are. The first thing they do is they build a pattern where they lie down with their child at bedtime to help them relax and get to sleep. That's got a name. It's called a sleep crutch. It's actually called a sleep onset association, right? We're back to Pavlov, as we always are in the world of sleep. Okay. So it's called a sleep onset association. Most people call it a sleep crutch. So they'll say, wow, my 4-year-old goes to sleep like a dream. I lay down with her, I rub her back, and she goes out like a light. And I say, yeah, I bet she does. And I bet you see her again, don't you? And they say, yeah, I do, because 4-year-olds wake up 2 to 6 times a night. And when they wake up to a dark, empty room without mom and her nice back rub, something's missing. And what's missing is that thing that helped you to fall asleep. And so you're going to see her. Let's call her, Sarah. You're going to see Sarah again, either calling out to you or crying or coming down to your room. And she's going to want to be physically next to you with maybe a back rub again, right? So that's sort of mistake number 1. And I'm a parent of 3. I get it, how cozy it is to cuddle your child at night. It's awesome. But you really want to work your way out of there before they're asleep, all the way to sleep. You don't want to carry them all the way to dreamland. So that's mistake number 1. And mistake number 2 is granting all those requests that you start to get when the lights go out, right? And it's another drink of water, check under my bed. I forgot to hug the dog. I forgot to kiss dad on the forehead, right? Like whatever it is. Okay. And my girls do theater. So I nickname those callbacks and curtain calls.
Great. That's a great
awesome.
title.
They are, right? So they'll call you back, or you think they're asleep and you're in the, living room, and they show up and make a curtain call and they let you know, P.S. I'm still awake. I'm not tired at all. Right. And so there's a great trick for both of those things. So I'll take the second one just because we just finished talking about it, right? Those extra requests. There's a great trick called a bedtime ticket. I didn't make it up. It's an old technique. And you give your child a couple of tickets when you're ready to leave their room. They can be Post-it notes, index cards that you've glittered up, or poker chips, anything. And let's call her Sarah, right? You give Sarah 2 chips and you head on out. That's like, you're not laying with Sarah, right? This is the other issue. And Sarah says, can you come check under my bed? And you say, yep, but that costs a ticket now, Sarah. And then you take her ticket, you give a check and give her a kiss on the head. Now you go, right? And then she says, I forgot to hug the dog. And you bring in the dog and she hugs the dog and you take the ticket. And then Sarah's out of tickets, right? And then you say to Sarah, this is how I fix problem number 1, where you're laying with Sarah. I have you read with Sarah and she's still awake. And then before she's sleepy, you give Sarah her own little basket. I call it a bedtime basket. It might have a picture book, might have, to date myself, Polly Pockets. It might have, a couple stuffed animals. And then you would say to Sarah, hey, we're all done with reading. I'm not going to lay in your bed anymore. I'm going to sit in a chair nearby. I'm going to read my own Kindle. You play with stuff in your basket or look at your book with a little bitty light, a little bitty reading light, until you're drowsy, but we're not going to talk and I'm not going to lay in your bed anymore. And Sarah's got something to do, so she's not so anxious, right?
Right.
And then you're sort of ignoring her and you've got something to do, your work or your book or whatever. And then you just walk that chair out slowly. Mm-hmm. And then if Sarah talks to you, you say, oh, it costs a ticket for me to talk to you or grant a request or whatever. And so those are just some really simple ways that I help kids learn to self-soothe. And I kind of get the parents out of that treadmill of granting a whole bunch of requests.
That
I
brought
go back,
me back.
Yeah. I go back
Yes.
to, I wish your book was out when I had the time.
My son used to grab my arm and I would lay down with him until he was completely asleep. And I think I was getting out and his arm would come up and grab me.
What
like,
nightmares
you're not going anywhere. He had a really strong arm.
Yeah. Work with kids who like twirl their mom's hair or wrap
right.
I call it an anchoring behavior because you don't want your sleep crutch to leave, right? So you got to hold my hand, mom, or you got to rub my back, dad. And it's just a way for them to know, hey, she's not sneaking out on me, right? Because they kind of learn to need you, right?
Yeah.
So did we traumatize the kids that we let cry it out? Because
that's what's happening
my pediatrician always said, because my oldest had trouble from the beginning, had trouble sleeping. And they said, do the 5-minute little egg timer. And at 5 minutes, go outside the room and say, you're fine. You're fine. Good. And then, 7 minutes. Meanwhile, she's hanging from the gate that you put in front of the door. My daughter actually fell asleep hanging from the gate. And the pediatrician said, put a blanket down. She won't do it again.
I love your pediatrician. I love your pediatrician. I love her. And no, you did not traumatize your children because they're not neglected children. They're beloved children, right? And so the stuff you read on the dark corners of the internet, okay, there are orphanages in Romania and your house is not one of them.
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're just
Yes.
saying to your daughter, you know what? You need your sleep. I need mine. Play with
Right.
your animals. Go to sleep. I'll see you in the morning. I can't wait to see you in the morning. There's nothing traumatic about that.
Oh, good. Because, you know, that was the big thing back. And I'm trying, it was, from
T-Berry Brazelton? No.
Dr. Brazel. No, there was another one. Sounded like Star
Penelope
Wars.
Leach? No.
Oh gosh, did you read a few books there, Bridget?
Oh, I used to watch their shows every, yeah, I know.
But there was the argument back when our kids were little that you let them cry it out because you didn't want to go. We did not lay in the bed with the kids.
Maggie wasn't as bad, but Jack, woo.
You do the best you can.
Yeah.
Dr. Spock. Dr.
Spock. Yes.
I knew it was like Star Wars.
Yeah. Dr. Spock.
Star
So
Trek.
I tend to do a little bit more of a gradually moving the parent out, as you can see, but either one works. And especially when they have something to do in their room, because that basket eventually turns into a book and a book light as they get older.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's true.
Yeah.
And it's not like
Lifelong
it's not, it's like putting them in a timeout in their room. It's not like they're really in trouble. They've got their toys, they've got everything else.
Right.
Wonderland in there, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So what, you see all the stuff about supplements, and I hear horror stories about Ambien that have happened to people I know. So
Yes.
I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So to me, melatonin is the thing I get asked about the most, right?
Okay.
And your body makes it. So it's not heroin, for heaven's sakes, right? Your body makes it. But the thing is that I think it's better to fix the problem at the source, right? So a lot of parents try melatonin for their children and they'll say, well, she falls asleep more quickly. Yeah, she does, but she still comes down the hall to find you, doesn't she? Yeah, she does, because when the melatonin wears off, you really didn't do the work of teaching her to self-soothe, right, with the book and the book light. And so she's going to still come find you. You just sort of fix the bedtime issue, but you're not going to fix the waking issue. And I find that's true for adults too. Maybe it helps you fall asleep more quickly, but you still might wake. So I still really love the approach of fixing it really from the bottom up and not with a Band-Aid, so to speak.
Okay.
Now,
yeah,
That's great advice.
Yeah. Having said that, there's something called the rescue protocol, which means that you have some kind of sleep aid that you feel okay about, and it's in your medicine cabinet. Okay. It could be Benadryl, it could be melatonin, could even be some very mild sleep aid. I hear the same stories you hear about Ambien, of course, right? But there are some sleep aids out there, and you would have it in your medicine cabinet. And what you would do is you would use it only after 2 poor nights of sleep in a row. Okay. So Monday's bad and Tuesday's bad, which PS it might not be because Monday was bad, right? And then Wednesday you could take your, let's say, over the counter something. And then you still have to wait 2 more nights before you're eligible, right, to take your sleep aid again. And that's such an elegant protocol because you'd never use it more than twice a week with that rule. And I have something I could use in a pinch. If I have 2 poor nights, then the third night I really want to sleep and I have this thing that I use. So
and that takes the pressure off of you because you're going to sleep, which so much of it is your psychological makeup.
Yep.
That you might fall asleep the second night knowing that, if I don't sleep, I have something there that's going to help me.
Yes.
You're back to what you said so smartly, Colleen. It's a mental game.
Right.
Right. It's managing your anxiety because you have tools to manage it with.
Oh, well, Lynelle, thank you so much for coming on this. I cannot tell you how helpful this was.
Yes.
Make sure, guys, to check out her book. Like I said, she's the author of Become Your Child's Sleep Coach, the Bedtime Doctor's 5-Step Sleep Guide from ages 3 to 10, which I might just keep in the house anyway.
Yeah. We hope to have grandchildren someday, and we'll probably be watching them. So
exactly.
Yes.
And a lot of our listeners are grandparents. So there you go. Now you have advice for your children, but also it's such, people take sleep for granted. And when you can't sleep, it affects every aspect of your life.
I'll tell you. Yeah. Sleep in good fitting shoes.
There you go.
if you can get your sleep in good fitting shoes, you are set. You are set.
No, you're right. I tell people sleep deprivation is how we torture people.
Right.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
true.
absolutely. Brainwashing, everything
Right.
like
It's,
that.
it's
Torture.
a terrible thing, and we don't want that to be true for anybody.
That's
So
right. That's
there's
right.
help out there.
Yes.
Well,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
so much,
much.
Lynelle. We will
Yes.
have all of your information in the show notes. So if people want to find you, they will be able to have your website and everything in there. But we
Thank you.
appreciate your time today. Thank you so
Thank you. Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Thanks for talking about sleep. Thank you so much.